Once upon a time, there was a husband and a wife. They had been trying for a really long time to get pregnant. And one day they finally did. And the wife was looking out past their house, thinking about how happy she was to finally have a baby. And she saw this garden. And it had all these pretty bushes of Rapunzel. And she told her husband that she must have that Rapunzel. And he said no because that garden was owned by an evil witch. But the woman thought about it day in and day out until she worried about it so much that she became ill. So her husband went to the garden and he stole her some Rapunzel. And she ate it up in a big salad. But then the next day she wanted more. And the husband said, "No, we can't go get more because that garden's owned by an evil witch." But she told him that if she didn't have it, she would get sick again. So the man went back to the garden and he took more Rapunzel. But the witch caught him. And she threatened to eat him up. And in his fear, he said, "Please, I'll do anything. Just please don't eat me up. I couldn't help it because my wife's pregnant and she was getting ill because she wanted so much of your Rapunzel." And the witch said, "I'll tell you what. You can have as much Rapunzel as you want if you promise me your firstborn." And the man was so afraid that he said yes. So they took Rapunzel day in and day out. But then when the woman gave birth and she had her baby, they had to give her to the witch. And the witch named this little girl Rapunzel, after the Rapunzel that her parents had taken. And to make sure that her parents did not come back for her, the witch locked her in this big tower. It had no doors, it only had one little window. The witch came to visit her every day by saying, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And Rapunzel would let down all of her long, beautiful hair, and the witch would climb up. But one day, a prince was riding by, and he heard Rapunzel singing. And he just thought, "That's the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. I have got to figure out who that is." So he found the tower. And he tried to get in, but he noticed there were no doors. So he kept coming and going to try to figure out how people came in. So every time he heard her singing, he would go back to the tower. And one day he saw the witch come. And she said, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And Rapunzel let down her hair and let her up. So the next day the prince came back and he yelled, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And she did, and he came up. But he scared her because she was expecting the witch and she got a dude and she didn't know who he was. So she got a little bit afraid. But then he was really nice to her and she calmed down. And he proposed right then and there. She said, "No, I can't marry you. The witch. She won't let me leave." And so he came back every day until she eventually agreed to marry him. And they had this plan where he was going to bring her a thread of silk every day, and she was going to weave a ladder out of him. So he brought her a thread of silk every day. And one day, Rapunzel said to the witch, "Why are you so much heavier than the prince who comes to see me?" Because Rapunzel was planning to escape that day, so she didn't think it mattered. And the witch got so mad that she took Rapunzel out of the tower and put her in the wilderness, all alone. And when the prince came to get her that day, he said, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And the hair came down, but when he climbed up, he found that the witch was holding it. And he was so sad that Rapunzel wasn't there that he jumped out of the tower. And he was okay, but he couldn't see anymore because he hurt his eyes on the way down. So he wandered the wilderness for years, blind, until he heard this beautiful singing. It was the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. And he thought it sounded familiar, so he went towards it. And Rapunzel saw him, and she recognized him, and she jumped into his arms. And she was crying these tears of joy because she was so happy. But some of her tears got into his eyes. And then he could see again. They fixed his eyes. And he brought her back to his castle, and they lived happily ever after.